You opened a budgeting app 3 days ago. You typed in every expense from the last month. You felt amazing for about an hour. Then today, you bought something you never planned for, and you didn't even think to check the app first. But here's what's actually happening to your money right now. It's not that you're bad with discipline. It's not that you didn't try hard enough. Your budget failed before you even opened the app, because of how your brain is built to make decisions about money in the moment. Most people think budgeting is a math problem. Add up your income, subtract your expenses, stay inside the lines. Simple, right? Except it isn't simple, because every time you spend money, you're not doing math. You're making an emotional decision in real time with a brain that was never designed for spreadsheets. Think about the last time you broke your own budget. Maybe it was a coffee. Maybe it was a late-night order you regretted the next morning. In that exact moment, did you stop to calculate your remaining balance? Or did you just feel like you wanted it and got it? That gap between what you planned and what you actually did has a name. Economists call it present bias. Your brain consistently overvises immediate rewards and underweighs future consequences, even when you know better. You're not choosing the coffee over your savings goal. You're choosing right now over a version of you that doesn't exist yet. The economist Richard Thaler spent decades studying exactly this gap between the rational plans people make and the irrational choices they actually carry out. He called the planning version of you the planner and the impulsive version of you the doer. The planner sits down on a Sunday night and builds a careful budget. The doer shows up on a Tuesday afternoon, tired, hungry, and overrides every rule the planner made. Two versions of the same person, two completely different sets of priorities, and the doer almost always wins, because the doer is the one actually holding the wallet. This is why willpower alone was never going to fix your budget. Willpower assumes a single, consistent decision maker. But you're not one decision maker. You're at least two, fighting for control of the same bank account. So why does the doer win so often? Part of the answer comes from how exhausting decisions actually are. Every choice you make, no matter how small, uses up a limited mental resource. Psychologists have shown that after a long day of decisions, your ability to resist temptation quietly collapses. This is sometimes called decision fatigue. By the time you're standing in front of a checkout screen at 9 p.m., you've already made hundreds of small decisions that day. Your brain isn't lazy, it's depleted. And a depleted brain doesn't reach for a spreadsheet. It reaches for relief. Here's the part that should change how you see every purchase you make. The behavioral economist Dan Ariely ran a now famous set of experiments showing just how predictable our irrational money choices really are. People didn't make spending decisions based on pure value. They made them based on framing, on context, on whatever option was placed next to another option. Change the framing and you change the decision, even though the actual money on the table never changed at all. That gym membership you had to buy, that subscription you forgot you were paying for. None of those were failures of math. They were predictable responses to how the choice was presented to you. Now think about your budgeting app again. It shows you numbers, categories, percentages, cold, neutral data. But your spending decisions were never made with cold, neutral data. They were made with emotion, urgency, and social context. You're trying to fix an emotional problem with a mathematical tool. Of course it keeps slipping. And it's not an accident that the apps on the other side of your screen feel so much more persuasive than the one tracking your budget. A countdown timer on a sale. A message saying only 2 left in stock. A one-tap checkout button that removes every possible pause between wanting something and owning it. None of that is decoration. It's friction removal, engineered by people who understand exactly how present bias and decision fatigue work, aimed directly at the doer in you at the exact moment the planner isn't looking. Your budgeting app asks you to add friction back into your life. Almost everything else you interact with is quietly working to strip that friction away. That's not a fair fight, and it was never supposed to be one you win through effort alone. There's a name for the deeper version of this gap too. The economist George Ainsley spent years studying why people consistently prefer a smaller reward right now over a larger reward later. even when they know the larger reward is the better deal on paper. He called the pattern hyperbolic discounting, and the strange part is how the math bends depending on distance. Ask someone if they'd rather have 1,000 rupees today or 1,200 rupees in a month, and a lot of people will still grab the smaller amount today. Ask the same question about a year from now versus 13 months from now, and suddenly, almost everyone is willing to wait the extra month. The actual gap in time is identical, but the moment today enters the equation, today wins almost every time. Your budget lives entirely in the language of later. Your spending decisions live entirely in the language of now. They were never speaking the same language to begin with. There's an even deeper layer underneath this. Money doesn't actually exist as one single thing in your mind. It exists as several different pots, even when it's sitting in the exact same bank account. This is called mental accounting, and it explains a strange contradiction almost everyone has lived through. You might refuse to dip into your savings to cover a bill, even while carrying credit card debt at a much higher interest rate. Mathematically, that makes no sense. Emotionally, it makes complete sense. The savings pot feels protected. The debt feels like someone else's problem to deal with later. Your brain isn't tracking total net worth. It's tracking the feeling attached to each labeled pot of money. So when your budget tells you to move money between categories, it's not just asking you to update a number. It's asking you to violate a mental boundary that feels almost sacred. No wonder it feels uncomfortable. No wonder you avoid opening the app for a few days after you go over in one category. You're not avoiding math. You're avoiding a feeling. Is this starting to sound less like a personal failure and more like a design flaw? Because that's exactly what it is. Most budgeting tools were built around the planner version of you, the calm one, the one filling out the app on a Sunday night with good intentions and a clear head. They were never built around the doer, the tired one, the stressed one, the one standing in line, scrolling a phone, making the decision that actually determines where the money goes. The psychologist Walter Mischel uncovered something decades ago that still explains this perfectly. In his famous delayed gratification experiments, children were left alone with a treat and a simple choice: eat it now or wait and get 2 treats later. Some children waited, most didn't. But the children who waited weren't necessarily stronger-willed. Often they had simply found ways to make the treat less visible, less tempting, less present in the moment. They changed their environment instead of fighting their impulses head-on. That single insight is the real reframe here. You don't beat impulsive spending with more willpower. You beat it by changing what's visible, what's easy, and what's automatic before the moment of temptation ever arrives. This is why automated transfers work better than manual discipline. The moment your paycheck lands, before the doer ever sees the full number, a portion is already gone, already moved, already protected. You're not relying on a tired version of yourself at 9 p.m. to make the right call. You're removing the decision entirely. This is why separating accounts works better than tracking categories in one place. When spending money is physically harder to access than saving money, the friction itself becomes the discipline. You're not stronger. The system is simply working with your brain instead of against it. This is why a 30-second pause before any non-essential purchase changes more behavior than an entire month of guilt afterward. You're giving the planner just enough time to catch up with the doer before the decision is already made. There's also a quieter pressure at work, one that rarely shows up in any budgeting app at all. Humans are wired to look at what people around them are doing and treat it as a signal for what's normal, safe, or expected. The psychologist Robert Cialdini described this as social proof, and money decisions are some of the most socially influenced decisions you make all month. The upgraded phone a friend just bought, the weekend trip showing up across every feed you scroll through, the quiet, constant sense that everyone else seems to be spending more comfortably than you are. None of that shows up as a line item anywhere, but it sits underneath almost every unplanned purchase, nudging the doer in you to keep up with a version of normal that was never really normal to begin with, just visible. None of this means budgeting is pointless. It means the budget was never the problem. The problem was expecting a list of numbers to override a decision-making system shaped by emotion, fatigue, and framing. A budget built only for your calm, rational planner self was always going to lose to the tired, impulsive doer who actually shows up in the real moments that matter. So the next time you miss a budget line, don't ask what's wrong with your discipline. Ask a better question. What part of your environment made that decision easier than it should have been? Where did the planner forget to protect the doer? Because the real shift isn't learning to resist temptation more bravely. It's learning to design a life where, by the time temptation shows up, the right decision has already been made for you. You didn't fail your budget 3 days after building it. Your budget failed to account for who you actually are the moment money is in front of you. Fix that, and for the first time, staying on track won't feel like a fight at all. It will start to feel less like discipline and more like a quiet kind of relief, the same relief the planner in you was hoping for all along.